So I was thinking about my relationship with women. It's kind of a thing I think about a lot. And it's definitely better now than it was, but I feel I've always had a kind of strange relationship with women, or I guess I should say females, because this dates back to, quite early in my life. So I grew up in a family of 6, and there were 4 of us boys, and then my parents. So I didn't have any sisters. Didn't really have many relatives, full stop, not many female relatives. And my mum, I would say, was like not the most traditionally feminine woman. She wasn't like a masculine woman either. But just not a typical kind of like, girl's girl. And didn't have a lot of friends, and not a lot of friends that were like that, So I was never really in that kind of environment, and as such didn't really understand women. And I would say in a lot of ways my mum, I think in a good way, is quite different emotionally to a lot of women, and more, I would say more straightforward emotionally, basically. And so I wasn't around. I wasn't around, female energy much when I was younger. And so at primary school, I think like most kids at primary school, you don't really like the opposite gender. You don't really socialize with each other, and that's kind of normal. And it's kind of a weird thing because you're kind of oddly intrigued by one another, but you're kind of like, like there was a sort of strange, weird thing of like don't talk to girls are disgusting, and then vice versa and whatever. And then you get to secondary school, and well, the thing was, right around the time that I became like concretely interested in girls, and it wasn't like this weird suppressed. It's almost like, I think when you're in primary school, I think you're like a suppressed heterosexual. You're like a closeted heterosexual. I actually remember I remember in primary school, in the later years of primary school, I guess if you're in America, it's different. Primary school finishes when you're like 11, approximately, 10 or 11. And I remember in the later years of primary school, I remember on separate occasions, me and my friends, like coming out as straight. Literally, it was like the same as coming out as gay, but you were coming out as straight. Like, I remember the first woman that I loved. Sorry. I remember the first woman that I loved was Kylie Minogue. And I remember confessing to, well, no, my friend told me, actually, he loved Kylie Minogue first. He was in love with her first. And he told me this, and I was like, "What the fuck, man? You're in love with Kylie Minogue?" I was like an Italian mobster finding out that my friend was like in love with a man. That one of my co-mobsters was gay for a man. I was like, "You fucking love Kylie Minogue? What the fuck is wrong with you, man?" I'm like, "Keep it down, bro. Don't tell me this. I don't want to know." And then he was like, "No, seriously, man. You should see Kylie Minogue. Like, you should see these music videos." And I was like, "Whatever, man." And then he was like, "You should see her in the movie Street Fighter." And I was like, yeah, whatever. And then like he showed me some Kylie Minogue stuff, and I was like, "I'm gonna have to think about this. All right, I'll think about it and get back to you." And then a couple of days later, I was like, "I love Kylie Minogue as well. And what are we gonna do about this?" It was like our little secret. Suddenly we were like, right, we're just fucked. Like, we're head over heels for Kylie Minogue. We have to somehow marry Kylie Minogue. And that started it. And but yeah, it was like just me and him. We didn't even tell anyone that we were in love with Kylie Minogue. And then it was J-Lo. I think from what I remember, year 5. So when we were like 9 or 10, it was Kylie Minogue. Then year 6, when we were getting a little bit more, getting a little bit more grown up, a little bit more saucy, we liked Jennifer Lopez. We were watching, as a joke, Made in Manhattan recently. J-Lo was unbelievable back then. Like, I forgot, because sometimes she didn't always look it, like, because a lot of the style back then was really fucked up, like the way women did their hair and stuff in like the sort of late 90s, early noughties. But J-Lo was unbelievable, particularly in that movie. And yeah, so I very quickly forgot Kylie Minogue. I left her, but I cast her aside like she was worthless. I was like, sorry, Kylie, I'm into Latinas now. And I remember being like, it was like unbearable how much I loved J. You don't, at that age, you're not like, I want to fuck her. Like, you just, you don't even know what that is. You're just like, I love her. I want to marry her. It's just so weird. But yeah, basically, we would just go and we would go into his shed and like hide in his shed and just talk to each other about how much we loved J-Lo. Because we followed the same trajectory. I don't know who, I think it was probably him that, got us into J-Lo as well. He started us on the Kylie Minogue and then he got us into the J-Lo. And he had 2 sisters and no brothers. And so he was quite he was somehow more normal around girls. In primary school we didn't hang out with them anyway, but it just somehow, for blokes that had sisters and stuff, it was just, I don't know what it was, but it was just more normal. Anyway, left primary school and then I went to an all-boys school because my parents wanted me. I didn't get bullied at primary. I don't really think I got bullied at primary school. I think towards the end of primary school, my friends kind of turned on me, and I think I had a lot of behavioural problems and a lot of partially it's just people acting like chimpanzees. The way people do in groups, they act like chimpanzees. I think I brought a lot of it on myself. I wouldn't say I see myself as a victim, really. I see it as like, oh, it's a shame that my childhood was like that, because there was a lot of rejection and a lot of social disappointment and a lot of insecurity. And to this day, I would say, with men and women, I have a lot of social baggage. Like, it's definitely not just a thing with women. Like, but I have a very good deal of like social baggage from childhood, from school, and also to be honest, from home. And a lot of insecurity. But no, I don't see myself as a victim in it, particularly in that scenario, because I feel like sometimes I was a bit of a dick to people, and then they would sort of like turn on me, and perhaps the way they might do it might be like disproportionate and unfair, but I do feel that sometimes, I wouldn't say I brought it upon myself, but I didn't do myself any favours would be the best way to put it. I think maybe that's how I'm remembering it. Maybe I'm like justifying, bullying or whatever, but I was very upset about it at the time anyway. Fell out with all my friends, and my mum didn't want me to go to the local school because she thought I would be bullied by them at that school. And maybe she was right. So they really wanted me to go to like a good school, like a nice school. All my brothers just went to the normal local school, and they hung out with normal kids from a variety of different class backgrounds and with boys and girls. But my parents, as I said, they wanted me to go to a different school. And so I tried to get into some of the school. I don't really have like comprehensive, grammar, private, public. I don't know the names of what all the different ones are. But basically, the schools where if you do well in the exams, you can just get in. And there was one school nearby. It was a mixed gender school, and it had a very good reputation. And if you could pass the exams, you could get in. And I wanted to go there, and my mum really wanted me to go there, and I didn't pass the exams. And so I didn't get in there. Tried another one, didn't get in there. And then the only one left that was like a different school was quite far away, and it was an all-boys school, and you had to pay. And because you have to pay, the exam is piss easy, basically. Like, it's barely it didn't seem like a particularly high bar for entry, and I think they were just happy to have people giving them fucking money every term. So I went there, and it was like a Catholic kind of rugby posh boys school, and we were all dweebs, we were all chubby, we'd all come straight from primary school, there were no girls, and I was like I was thinking, this is, I don't know, I didn't want to go to a boys' school. Basically, I felt like after being rejected by the other schools, I was kind of like, someone wants me, I felt like kind of validated that I got in. I felt it was a big deal, because you don't really, at that age generally, unless you're an exceptional kid, you don't have any moments where you've achieved something or you celebrate something, or I didn't anyway. Like, I never did anything. So I think I liked the attention and the feeling of like, wow, I got into this school, even though it was like easy. But, when we got the letter, I was like excited. And that made me, not really contemplate properly, like, oh, I'm going to just be around boys. But I was, because at this time, I forgot it wasn't just Kylie and Jay. We got really into Jordan, into Katie Price. And this was when, I don't know what's just happened to my camera, why it's gone all weird. Hang on, let me figure this out. All right, new camera's a pain in the arse already. Anyway, but I do remember actually by the time I left school, it had become we were all openly straight. We'd all come out of the closet as straight. By the time I left primary school, we were obsessed with Jordan, Katie Price. If you're English, you'll remember who Jordan, Katie. If you're my age, you'll definitely remember, or older. I'd say I was the cut-off. Like anyone younger than me probably doesn't really. Well, they do. Everyone knows who Katie Price is because she's such a disaster now, obviously, and she's been in the media non-stop. But it's a bit like, when there's like footballers that you remember now as like a joke of a pundit or like a fat idiot or something. But if you're old enough, you remember when they were an amazing player. It's a bit like that. If you're old enough, you remember when Jordan was like considered like the hottest woman on earth, if you were English. And every like builder was looking at her in magazines, and she was on TV. And as a primary school kid, that's pretty much the height of attractiveness. Just huge, round, like footballs for tits, like round, rock hard, fake tits, and you're like, that's me sorted. You can't really contemplate like tits shouldn't be like footballs. You're just like, yeah, that's perfect. The bigger, the better. Basically, she could probably double them, and that would be fine by me. So we were really into Jordan, and then we were becoming increasingly by the time I feel like leaving primary school is timed with when it's sort of timed right around the time you start to become like really horny, basically. So our conversations at lunch were increasingly about just like what we were going to do to Jordan. The things that in retrospect would have been very illegal for her to partake in. But extremely illegal and disgusting and infantile. I remember one particular fantasy about sliding down the stairs and just... what is wrong with this camera, man? Hang on. Okay, I've turned the automatic white balance off. So it looks very green now, but I'm an absolute master of colour grading, so I'm going to fix that in post. Now I actually have footage of good enough quality to be worth colour grading. I mean, look at this with the cushions in the background and everything. Anyway, a lot of slapstick, in retrospect, infantile scenarios about things we wanted to do to Jordan or Jordan to do to us. Anyway. So then went to secondary school, and I was with all these again, just a mishmash of like boys who couldn't get into. A lot of it was like rich Indian kids or Turkish kids, like rich dads, and like none of us were that bright or anything really. We just it was just like, our parents had enough money and for whatever reason didn't want us to go to a normal school. And I think quite early on it became clear that I would have been much better off at a normal school. Like, I'm not a super normal person, but a normal school is actually full of a very wide variety of people. It's less conformist, when you go to like a posh rugby Catholic boy school, it's actually worse to be weird. There's less deviation. There's less deviation from the norm, basically. So I didn't really fit in there, and it was weird, and I just was kind of resented being around like just boys. And then we would have like school dances, like discos, and like the girls' school would come. How fucking weird were those, by the way, man? Not being funny, but who signs up to be the DJ at those events? Like, I mean, Jimmy Savile, actually, that was who. Not for mine. I'm not saying Jimmy Savile was there, but he did do that for other schools, a bit before my time. But I'm not saying everyone who does that job is Jimmy Savile. Some of them are probably really good people. But my God, you couldn't pay me enough to be a DJ at a school disco, and they do like weird songs, and they'd ask you to kiss and stuff. It's fucking disgusting, to be honest. I can't even. Oh yeah. Anyway, that was always weird, and I was like, it was just it's just too intense for me. Like, just girls, I was just too. I couldn't be normal and chill, and I wasn't around them ever. So it was like, oh my god, a girl. Am I gonna dance with a girl? And then like any rejection would feel, or any bit of a like hint of maybe like attention, I would misinterpret and be like, oh my god, I love her. And like, I think that's quite normal. It's not everyone is like that, but I think it's quite normal that a lot of boys, a lot of girls as well, are exactly the same. I think much of this is completely reversible. Not reversible. I think actually it's not reversible, and that's kind of what I want to talk about in this video. Is I think some of it leaves a kind of indelible mark on you. But what I mean is you can reverse the genders, and a lot of this is the same. To girls, like boys are a big deal, and probably like frightening, and for boys, girls are a big deal, and sort of more frightening in a different way, maybe more socially. So anyway, yeah, I just remember it was always like I didn't know how to deal with these things and whatever. It wasn't something I could navigate. Basically, it was very intense for me. It was a big deal, and I couldn't read normal social cues, and I couldn't rely on the things that I could just about get by with around boys, just like trying to be funny and being the joker and doing other stuff. Like, I couldn't really do that, and so it was just all just crazy. And I remember it was just so all consuming, like so intense. So I went there for 2 years, and then we moved, and we went through in that time a lot of personal tragedies as a family. Yeah, a lot of bad stuff happened to us, and things were very, very bad at home. And then we moved to a completely new part of the country, new place, new school. And I guess to compound things, I mean, first of all, I was one of the youngest people in my year, and I didn't realise until I got older how significant that is, or how old you are relative to the rest of your year. Like, there's a really disproportionate amount of footballers and other athletes, I think particularly in football, are the older kids in their year. So they're born in I think September, October, November. A very disproportionate amount are. Depends on when the school year is done in your country, but basically 10 months of extra puberty or whatever makes a huge difference at that age, because you grow so fast. It's an enormous difference. So think of how much you can change in 10 months when you're like a 13 or 14-year-old boy. So imagine that difference compared to other kids in football, for football being one example. It also applies to intellect and of course socially, and to how tall you are and how attractive girls find you and stuff. But just take football, for example. Then they go, okay, this kid's good. Put him in the upper group. Put him in group A with the kids who are good at football. These other kids who were born in July and shit, they're fucking terrible. So just I was born in July, and I was tiny, and I would have still been small. I wouldn't have been, even if you gave me that extra 12 months or whatever, I wouldn't have been massive, but it would have made a huge difference. I wouldn't have, when you add someone who's a bit of a late developer and a bit small, and then you also make them the youngest person in their year, it's quite a big disadvantage. A year is a long time, basically, when you're a kid. I mean, if you consider, for example, when you're 4, between the ages of 2, 3, 4, think how a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old are so different. A 3-year-old and a 4-year-old, and you'd assume really that's the same. Obviously, that difference gets relatively smaller as time goes on, but still, yeah, it's crazy. So I think that that was also a factor. I was just small and weird, and it was bad. It was bad time. Like for many teenagers entering the sort of early years of being a teenager, awful time for boys, for girls, for most people. I think it's a truly awful time that you could not pay me to repeat. Just hideous. And I wouldn't say I was at the bottom of that, and the absolute sort of arse end of it, but it was pretty bad. I would say quite a bad time for me personally. I had it quite bad, and The camera's gone all fucking weird. What is it? I'm sorry I keep pausing the video. Okay, this is going to be like a stopping, starting, kaleidoscopic, colour shifting, contrast shifting, nonsensical video. But anyway, yeah, so it was pretty bad in that regard. Then I started at a new school, completely new part of the country, completely different culture, and suddenly I was in a mixed school. And I would say, I mean, to be honest, like this video, I'm talking specifically about the female aspect of all this. I think I have a very weird relationship with men as well. I think I just have a weird relationship with people. I think I just have social difficulties and sort of social trauma, I guess you would say, not to be too dramatic, but I think so, really. I mean, something that happened to you, you know, decades ago that still causes you like intense emotions to this day and causes you to have reactions you don't understand to situations or something. I think that would be defined as trauma. It's not trauma on the level of you know, being shot or something, but it's a kind of social trauma, for want of a better phrase. So in general, yeah, it wasn't good in general. And when I started at the new school, yeah, didn't fit in, whatever. But I could just about get by with guys, you know. And there was this ongoing problem when it came to girls of like, yeah, I was extremely underdeveloped physically, like extremely underdeveloped, like really, really late developer. I must have been one of the latest developers, really, like definitely in my sphere. I remember having some crazy experiences, like oh man, this is embarrassing, but it's not embarrassing because I was a kid, but it's just weird. It's just weird to talk about on a video. But when I was at summer camp, I guess when I was like 13 or something. I don't remember exactly how old, but basically when you're a boy that age, like it's quite, I think it's quite common. I can't speak for everyone. I know that when I was a kid, this was common, was to like show each other our dicks, and that started at quite a young age. And when you're young, everyone's got like a tiny dick, you know. And then when we started to get a bit older, I kind of remember feeling like, oh, I think people are starting to get like normal sized dicks now, and I still have a baby dick. And I do not have a baby dick now. I want to clarify that. I'm doing absolutely fine. But suddenly I'm realising I've talked about this in a previous video. I don't remember which one. So apologies if you've heard that and you're like, Jesus Christ, he's talking about fucking kid dicks again. But basically, there was a period where I was starting to clock. I'm just ignoring the camera, by the way. The colours are going in and out. It's going light and then dark. This is a fucking disaster. I'm going to probably send it back. It's an experimental video. So anyway, yeah, it was. I remember a period when it was kind of, what is this, man? This looks like the Addams Family. You're probably not going to see any of it because I'm going to edit it out and make it look good, but it's ridiculous. It looks like the Matrix right now. Oh my god, Jesus. Anyway, it's probably because the sun is setting as well. Let me bung this on. Oh, look at that. That's still hideous, but a bit nicer. Yeah, so I remember this period of like suddenly clocking like, okay, other people have got like normal dicks and pubes and stuff, and I've got like a literal pubeless baby dick, and yeah, and I was at summer camp, and there was these like sort of cool kids there or whatever. And anyways, cut a long story short, a painful story. Not painful for me, I mean painful for you. I feel bad even telling it. It's disgusting. But we were like showing each other they were showing each other their dicks, and I remember thinking, oh, I used to fucking love this, you know. So 3 years ago, you know, I would have been all over this. But now there's this new issue, you know. And everyone was like showing their dicks. And I remember these kind of like cool kids, you know. It was like this main guy who was like the kind of became like the cool kid at this summer camp. Obviously you're only there for like a week or whatever. And then he had like his kind of black sidekick. They were like showing their dicks and stuff, and I was like, I remember for some reason I was on the top of a bunk bed with no one else underneath, and I was just lying down on the bunk bed. And I remember kind of looking where they were showing each other their dicks and being like, "Yeah, yeah, no one's got a baby dick anymore." And I was like, "Oh god, this is bad." And then they were all like, "Why aren't you showing your dick?" And I was like, "Trust me, fellas, you know." I'd love to, but there's a huge problem. No, but I don't think I said it. I think I just tried to evade it, you know. And I was like, "Oh, I don't know, man. Whatever. You guys have your fun. Show each other your dicks." And I like really didn't want to. And then the guy, the cool one, he was like, "Come on, man, like, show everyone your dick." Imagine you're a camp counselor and you walk in and you open and you're just like, "Oh, I'll come back." You look through the window and you're just like, "Oh my god, I wasn't here. You just go straight to the desk. You're like, I quit. This is my last day on the job. I'm going home now. I was never here. If you tell anyone I was here, I will kill you." Yeah. So anyway, then in the end, yeah, they like coaxed me into it. They were like, "Just come on, man, it's all right. Just show us your dick." They were like, "Is it small?" And I was like, "Yeah, to be honest, man, yeah, like I haven't gone through puberty. My dick's tiny." And they for some reason I agreed. And I remember I was on the top bunk of this bunk bed, showing everyone for some reason my erect tiny penis. Oh, it's so weird, isn't it, man? Jesus. But it's just, at the time, it's not that it's normal at the time, but it just seemed to be what happened. Anyway, yeah, another tangent of this. I remember when we would go on like school trips when we were in primary school, and we'd all get those disposable cameras, and like everyone would just be taking pictures of their dicks and stuff. Imagine you're the guy who worked at the film developing thing and you're like, oh god, it's a school trip one. Okay. Oh, please no. You have to like develop the photos and it's just unbelievable, really, like truly unbelievable. Anyway, so I was showing them my dick and then I remember one of them being like, he was like, the cool guy, he was like, "Man," everyone was like, "Shit," like looking at my dick and they're like, "Oh my god, bro." And then I just distinctly remember him going, "I feel sorry for you, bro. I feel sorry for you, bro." I was just there like for some reason with a boner. You'd think, okay, this is gonna, I must have some like weird fetish now. I think what probably helps is like I have quite a big penis now, like not crazy, but like I don't have a small penis, basically, put it that way. Like I don't have a small penis. I think if I had a small penis, I would probably have like a gay small penis humiliation fetish or something. But thankfully, it's not imprinted on my sexuality in any way, which has been very helpful for me growing up. You know, that when I did develop, everything was normal. But anyway, still, I would say, whilst it didn't imprint on me in that particular way, it did in many others, coupled with many other experiences. It gives you this feeling of like, I am like very pathetic and sort of subhuman and abnormal and a freak and of course not fit to even like be near females, you know? And like guys like that, obviously at that age would have like girlfriends and stuff. And to me, it was like, especially during this period, it was like, that is a world away and it's something I can never really expect to be part of. And there were numerous other incidents very similar to that one, like sort of nightmarish humiliations that I will spare you, like getting it. You can basically copy paste that experience like 3 or 4 times in different contexts and different types of contexts and whatever. And it was bad. Yeah, very bad. And disgusting. So there was all of that, and that didn't help. And then just being, generally like quite a small kid with like tits and stuff, and not very popular, joining a new school, not good at sports, not particularly, well, I think I'm quite smart, but like I didn't do well at school, and I wasn't academic, and didn't really display my intelligence through anything other than sort of weird closed off kind of arrogance, you know, which is not, again, does not endear you to people, particularly not girls. So yeah, socially all weird, and at school, from when I started going to a mixed school, I remember girls generally either just completely ignored me. Like, a lot of girls at school I think are quite nice. Like, there's a lot of very sort of just boring nice girls who kind of just ignore you. Like, if they're, they're not interested in you, they just ignore you, and they're not. There was a good portion of girls that were just kind of like that. Like, I wouldn't say when I went to this mixed school, I wouldn't say there was a particular bullying culture or anything. So most of the time, like, people were generally, it was pretty live and let live. It wasn't too bad really, but like, generally, basically, the overwhelming majority, it was like, I can't even really see this person because I just don't register him as like a male of any interest or whatever. And you sense that, you pick up on it, and you kind of like, oh, I'm just a goblin in the corner, and then, or for some reason, like, active repulsion and hatred, And again, I can't say I feel too much like a victim, because I remember there were girls in my year who were like so fucking ugly that they were like the butt of a joke. You'd use them as a joke, They were like people where they were like borderline, like there was something seriously wrong with them. They weren't just a bit ugly, It was like they had like a disfigurement or something. And you'd use them as like the butt of a joke, not really to their face most of the time, but again, they got the message. They knew how people felt about them, and so it's hard when I kind of partook in that. It's hard for me to look back and feel like a victim, but it doesn't mean I feel good. I don't feel, like happy about how things were. And I think that's part of why I don't feel happy about just any of it, because I feel it's kind of like that for everybody in some way. And I remember, like, I don't dislike anyone really when I look back, because I can see as an adult, when I look back, I can see like most of the people who were dicks, they did it because they were like weird or insecure or something. There weren't that many people who were just outright dicks. There were some, but most of them, there was something wrong with them, or there was something wrong at home, or they just didn't understand what they were doing. So it's quite an ugly environment because it's so formative. And I'm sure if you or someone for example, like some people who were badly bullied at school, a lot of them are scarred for life. Like they're just never able to be normal, to feel normal. They are able to, but it's very hard. Like, and they can never feel completely normal socially, and they just carry it with them in so many different ways forever. And so all of it is very, very formative, and yeah, so for me it was, and there was, as I say, that feeling of just being sort of regarded as like ugh, and like, or just completely ignored, or for some reason often like kind of hated. And there were times at school when I was younger, I kind of got it. I think I sort of deserved it a bit. But when I was older, I don't really see how I deserved it. I don't really see how I brought it upon myself much. I think some of it was just people were just like not very nice. And I just remember like there were times like certain girls were just like, just for whatever reason, just hated me, like just really hated me. And it was like, I hadn't done anything in particular. I just didn't have the sort of social cachet to like defend myself or put a barrier around myself or whatever, and wasn't particularly confident or popular or anything. So it sort of wasn't. There wasn't really any way of like rebutting. And yeah, I realised now. I realised it today because I was just talking to someone about it and I was remembering it. I've realised like some of that in particular, the sort of like unprompted kind of hatred that like certain girls for some reason, like sort of popular, attractive ones, like just hating me for some reason. I hadn't really done anything, and I think that in particular, I think that was like the straw that broke the camel's back. I think it was kind of because I remember thinking when I was at the boys' school and I found out I was going to go to a mixed school, I was like, wow, yeah, I'll have friends that goes, because I didn't even, it wasn't just like I wanted to, I remember I would see at other schools, like mixed gender groups of friends and stuff, and I was like, I want to be like that, it looks normal, I'd like to at least be friends with girls, and just be around them, and just, I was just intrigued, just this whole subset of the population that you have no contact with and you know nothing about really, and that you never speak to, and you're sort of sequestered away from. So I remember just thinking I just wanted to be friends with girls as well. Like, I just wanted to just be normal. Like, I just wanted to just hang out. And I think around then, quite early into going to a mixed school, just receiving a lot of this, I've as I say, I've kind of completely ignored, or a bit of revulsion, or for some reason hatred. And I think when I remember that now, I remember that kind of sticks out more than anything, because sometimes it just pops into my head. And I think things that you remember, you tend to remember them for a reason. So if there's certain things you just remember a lot, I think it's because they stood out to you. And I remember it quite vividly. And I sort of think that was where I kind of cut off a bit. I kind of was like, right, they're just not for me. They kind of, I can't do anything about this. I can't deal with this. And it felt very bad. It felt extremely bad. And instead of, there are probably some people who think, oh, well, I'm going to like do something about this, or I'm going to change myself. Well, I didn't really. I just retreated more into myself and more into feeling miserable about it and more into my insecurities, and then just became more and more like, just continue just not caring and being unkempt and just being like, kind of just like, whatever, I'm never going to be, like, I'm always going to be sort of like a goblin. And so you carry that. And then wasn't long after that before, porn came into the picture. And I on the one hand, I feel very angry about how much porn I saw when I was basically a kid. On the other hand, I feel lucky that I say basically a kid, because I was like 14 or 15 when this became really prevalent. And I know now there are actual children for whom it's quite normal to look at, and I can't even comprehend how much that would have damaged me, because I know how much it damaged me to get like shitty quality, quite difficult to access porn when I was like 14 or so. And then over the next few years, it became easier and easier and easier and more accessible. Still not that HD at that time. And again, like a bit harder to access. Now it's just like you can find anything on any device at any time, with any type of woman, with any type of man, anything, and it's horrifying to me. It's just horrifying. But anyway, that became a thing, and suddenly it was like, well, it doesn't really matter if girls like me or not, because I've got porn. And so you go from not having a human way, or I shouldn't universalize this, because I think it isn't normal for everyone, but I went from not having a human way to interface with females to having a very dehumanizing way to interface with them through porn, which is just pure objectification. And I think that is the crux of it, really. And so it's been very hard to have normal feelings towards women. Well, it depends. I mean, the family member I get on best with is my mum, but obviously that's my mum, so it's quite a separate thing, and my wife, we're technically not married yet, but we're in the process of doing it. It's just a pain in the ass to do it here, but essentially my wife, the person who I am with long term, we've been together a long time, and she's my best friend in the world, and we love each other, and I don't get on that well with anyone else, any male or anyone. However, she is also not a very typical female, and to be honest, she has a very weird relationship with women as well. She gets on much better with men, and she doesn't really understand or relate to women, and that might be part of why we get along quite well, is because she is not a typical female, and she's for example, like, she really wants a son, and I kind of do as well, but I'm like, whatever. But I would prefer to have a son, but I also sort of think that's not really my place to decide. It just kind of happens. But she, I think, has quite a strange relationship, possibly stranger than me, with females. And so that isn't really, that is, my relationship with her is more kind of the rule than the exception, if you know what I mean. And I think if you talk about normal women and sort of normies, I don't think it's weird that I don't get along with them or don't relate to them, because I don't with very typical men either. Most people who are a stereotype, for example, it's not really a good thing to be a a very stereotypical man or a very stereotypical woman or a very stereotypical whatever race you want to name. Generally a very stereotypical person of any group is probably not that great. So I think it's fairly understandable I don't get on with the average sort of white wine and weekend city breaks HR kind of lady or something. I think that's quite understandable. It's a very, very, very different type of person to me, irrespective of my relationship to women. But in general, it's very hard. It's not always. I mean, through my job, I feel in a work context, I've had some very good sort of working relationships with different women, and which has been really good. I've actually some very surprisingly platonic and normal relationships that I value a lot, but it's not in real life. It's all remote. And in real life, I don't really interact with anyone. So I think a lot of this stuff I've outgrown, to be honest. It's not really something that's a factor for me so much now. Or would be, if I were a person that socialised a lot. But there's also the, there's the porn thing and the sort of porn brain, which is really difficult and kind of consuming, and then there's just, I'm very uncomfortable a lot of the time. I'm just very uncomfortable and very I find it difficult to relax or be normal or be myself. And I think now there's a lot of cultural stuff, a huge gender divide culturally, so I think that's a big factor. And I try now not to think about, I try not to look at the news, I try not to look at politics, I try to remember that a lot of online gender politics and socio-political stuff is just online. I try, but it's hard, and I know that it's hard for everyone, so I know that it affects everyone, and it's very unfortunate. It feels harder than ever to interact as individuals, at least harder than I ever remember it being. I remember it being a lot easier before, certainly along the lines of race and sexuality, and I think gender too, but as I've talked about in this video, that was always weird for me. And now it's become, to be honest, when I was in the early years of my relationship with my basically wife, I was constantly obsessed with other women and porn and just and it was a very dysfunctional relationship in general, and there was quite a lot of that in both directions. But anyway, it was a very dysfunctional situation. I was constantly obsessed with all of this stuff. I was I was just so obsessed with porn, and not just with porn, but with pornifying everything, in my mind, and just horrible. So in hindsight, just not just gross, but idiotic. It's just who gives a fuck, to be honest? Who cares? So it's so weird and sort of it's not even animalistic. It's worse than that, because animals don't have. It's not just a sexual thing, it's it's more than that. It's internet addiction and dopamine addiction and all of this. But anyway, I was like that. And I felt, because of other things that were going on in our relationship, I felt I had kind of moral license to do whatever I wanted and be whoever I wanted, because I was being mistreated in other ways, so I didn't have to fucking care about anything I was doing. As we've gotten older and our relationship has become a lot healthier, I think physically I still have, I think underneath I still have like, in some ways I'm not that different except morally. And so I'm kind of like, it's really hard to describe this because I still don't really understand it myself, but I've noticed it recently. Like in the past, I would just like, say I'm like out and about and it's like a hot day or whatever and there's like hot women around, like I'd just be like looking at a hot woman, I'd be horny or whatever. And now I feel like it's like bad feeling. I don't know how to describe it. It's almost like if you're like gay and you grow up in an environment where you're not supposed to be gay, you know, and you're seeing like attractive men and you're like, ugh, and you just feel like, you know, it's like it feels like being a very deeply closeted gay man, or like a gay man who's been through conversion therapy or something. I think that's how I would describe it. I feel like I've gone through conversion therapy. I feel like I've told myself so much that it's shameful to be attracted to women, that I have a problem, that they don't like me, that my attention is disgusting, that sexualizing anyone is just like pathetic and gross, and that really just those things. And those things, like many of them are true, but it doesn't feel healthy. It doesn't feel healthy to feel this way. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel normal. And so I feel very, I have a very strange cocktail of emotions. As I said, I think when things were really bad in our relationship and I felt very hard done by, it was like a release valve, because I was able to just go, I can fucking think whatever I want. And actually at the time, it wasn't just sexual. I used to think romantically about other women. I used to fantasize about like being with someone else, you know, like because romantically I wanted to like escape. I was so unhappy at times, not always, but there were times when I was so unhappy, like I would just want to like escape into like fantasies of like being with someone different and not being in this nightmare situation that I was often in. And I certainly don't feel like that now. Like I don't feel, I'm not feeling, there's not a lack of love in our relationship or my life, and I'm not like suffering intensely like I was. So I don't think that way about other women, like romantically. And so there's that as well, that like it's hard to describe. It's hard to even understand myself. But basically it's I think for some people it could just be a healthy, normal thing. You can be in a relationship and you just see a woman and go, oh, she's hot, she's nice, oh yeah, and like some people like flirt with people and whatever, and it's, you know, for me, again, everything's like a big deal, everything's like weird and everything's kind of intense and everything's whatever. So it's almost like there's a part of me now is like, well, okay, if it's not that, if I'm not looking at people, if I'm not looking at women like that, what am I looking at them as? And I say women, really, I mean women my age, or roughly my age, because like older women I get on great with for some reason. like old women, you know, like middle-aged women, completely different story. But that's just a completely different thing, really. It's a completely different demographic of people. But yeah, it's I don't know. I've not really learned how to, or not really had the familiarity or the experience of just being sort of normal with one another. And I also think it's also something that would not really be comfortable within the confines of my relationship anyway, is like just being like friends. In general, to be honest, like again, this is something probably a lot of people disagree with. I don't really think, if you're in a long-term relationship, I don't really think you should be friends with people your age of the opposite gender. I just think it's weird. And I know a lot of people disagree with that, but I think a lot of people agree as well. I think it's a bit weird. Like your wife's like, I'm going out to hang out with Steve or whatever. You're like, what the like, it's just bizarre. Just, I don't know. Yeah. I know there are some people for whom it works and who do it. I think it's kind of insane. But anyway, yeah. So I think there's that. So it's just for so many reasons. It's almost like it's something that has been through my perception, the perspective I've often necessarily been looking at things from. It's become weird. It's become a big deal. That the interactions have become very strange and warped, and I've developed it's almost like a nervous tick or like a weird insecurity where now, like the thing of like when you're like standing near the edge of like a cliff or something, and you're like, I could just jump off, and like you don't want to jump off the cliff, but then all you can think about is like jumping off the cliff, and then you're sort of just in like a thought loop. It's kind of like that. I think like I'm just kind of like, I think I'm like, oh, this is supposed to be a nerve-wracking situation, I'm supposed to feel weird right now. I always feel weird in these situations, so I kind of do, and I fucking don't really leave the house much, or I do, but I just go out to like be in nature or whatever. I don't socialize, so that doesn't help, and it doesn't help that you get into a relationship because you're attracted to people of the opposite sex, and you want to, partially because you like them as people, but also partially because you're attracted. Well, unless you're gay, then you're attracted to people of the same sex. But whatever the case, that doesn't necessarily just turn off one day as well. You don't suddenly just become, asexual when you get into a relationship. So I think that's weird for everyone. I think that's just weird, full stop, for a lot of people. Not everyone. Some people are very grounded mentally and are very like good in that way. I think for most people that's kind of a weird thing. And for me, it's just weird to reckon with how I was in that regard. It's hard to relate to that person, and I don't like it. I don't think it's nice, and it's not how I want to be. So yeah, that's all really. I can't really think of what else to add, and I've sort of described it all, and at this stage I don't really know what I'm describing or what I'm talking about, because as I say, it's stuff I'm still thinking about. But yeah, that's all anyway. I would imagine this is not a completely unique experience, and that other people have similar-ish feelings on the topic, maybe. So as usual, interested to know your guys' thoughts in the comments. And yeah, that's all. Thanks for watching. Bye.